Hey everyone, it's Analena here, and I posted something on my Instagram a couple of days ago about my journey from tropical human design to cosmic or true sidereal human design. And there were some really good questions that made me realize that I can explain this a little bit further. And I know I've done already a couple of trainings on it, but the one question that came up, like, where does this human design type come from? Because one of the things that happens very often, it doesn't have to, but it's very likely that when you look at your regular human design chart from tropical, that you're one type, and then in the cosmic or true sidereal human design chart, you're a completely different type. And I think that really throws people off, which I totally understand. So I want to actually explain to you in this video here that, or how the human design type even comes about, like where does it come from? So I'm going to make it hopefully as simple and precise as possible and not too long. So this is a human design chart. This is actually my tropical chart. And you're going to see, right, all these numbers on the left, they're usually in red, and on the right, the numbers are in black. And that's really the first thing that I want to explain to you, what this is and how those numbers actually create your human design chart and your human design type. So what does it mean? On the right side, where we have the numbers in black, this is based on the time that you were born. Again, this is right now based on tropical astrology. So the sun is the very first sign, was in gate 13 in this case. The second number is the line. I'm not going to talk about the lines today at all. But the first number is the gate. And we have a total of 64 gates in human design. And this is why I have also here, if you're watching this on video, it's like a circle up in the sky, right? Where we have all 64 gates, and the sun transits through all 64 gates throughout the course of the year. So here we have gate 13, which is the beginning of February, according to tropical. It's an Aquarius here. And then next, so it's going to be for 5-6 days here. And then the next is going to move into gate 49, gate 30. And then after a year, it's going to come back to gate 13, right? And the Earth is always going to be at the exact opposite in the sky. So this is why in this case, it's gate 7. And then we also have the nodes. The nodes, obviously, they're not really planets, but we also have them in the human design chart. And then we have the moon, Mercury, and so forth, all these planets. And not every planet moves like the sun, right? The sun moves just like the Earth through all 64 gates over the course of the year. But the moon, for example, moves through all 64 gates within one lunar cycle, right? Within 28.5 or 29 days. Then we have some other planets like Pluto is super slow. It takes sometimes months and years to move through parts of the sky. This is why those slower moving planets, they impact us a little bit less, and they're going to be in one gate for much, much longer. And people that are usually born close to when you were born, they may also have similar gates than you in those slower moving planets in their chart, right? So now what happens is that these gates, all that you have activated, that's what we call them in human design. Literally imagine this whole human design chart would be completely white. You can take a black pen and you're going to find this 13. The 13 comes up this G center here. And you see, this is why the 13 here is colored in black, because I have this gate activated. The 7 here is colored in black. The 62 here is colored in black. It's also in red. I'm going to get to the red part on the left in a little bit. But you can literally look at your chart. You're going to find all the gates you have on the right side. They're going to be colored in, or we call it defined in the human design chart, in black. Again, if you have a different software, maybe a different color, but I think you know what I mean. Now we're going to do the same exercise for the left side. The left side is what we call the body, or the unconscious side. And this is based on, according to human design, about 88 days before you were born. This is what really is the unconscious part of us, right? And that's kind of the nice thing. In human design, we bring both the conscious and the unconscious, because in astrology, we really only look at the conscious part. And I do believe that the unconscious part does play a really big role. So same thing here. At this time, about 88 days before I was born, the sun was in gate 1. The Earth was in gate 2. And again, you can find this here, right? And you can also see, this is here, gate 13 was when I was born on the conscious side, and you go about back 88 days-ish, and it gets to this gate 1. And then the opposite was gate 2 here in this mandala. And again, you're gonna go here in the chart and you find, okay, gate 1 is here, is colored in red, gate 2 here in red, 62. Again, now we have it both conscious and unconscious, right? So anytime you have a gate twice in your chart, it becomes kind of a theme. And all the other ones, you're going to find them. Gate 50 here, I actually have it double because I also have it on the conscious side as well. And all of these gates you will find. So that's the first explanation of why certain gates are defined in your chart. Now, what happens, which then leads us to the human design types, is that when two gates come together, like here, the 45 and the 21, and as this example, they create what we call a channel. And whenever you have a channel in your human design chart, it activates or defines the two centers on each side of the channel. So the throat center in this chart is only defined or colored in, as well as the will center or ego center in this case, because this person has the complete 45-21 channel defined. And it doesn't matter if it's conscious or unconscious or both. Now, if this person did not have, let's say, the gate 21 defined, which literally could have happened very easily if the person would have just been born. So it's gate 20, it's the moon moves very fast, but 12 hours later, most likely this would not have been defined. And so the will center and the throat center wouldn't actually be defined for this person at all. So some very subtle changes that can quickly happen lead to the centers being defined or undefined. And the other ones too, right? The G center and sacral are defined because of the 214 channel. The sacral is also, you can call it maybe double defined because it's also the 34-57 channel. So if only gate 2 would not be defined in this person's chart, let's just imagine, hypothetically, the sacral would still be defined because of this connection here to the spleen, but the G center would be undefined. Yeah. And this is how this all comes about, like what centers you have defined or not defined. So this particular example here is a manifesting generator, and I'm going to now give you a very brief overview of what makes the type distinctions. And I want to also say one thing from what I have learned is that in the very beginning, we didn't have human design types. They simply looked at the chart, looking at the defined and undefined aspects and the gates and the channels and the centers itself. But I think over time, they noticed some commonalities, and then at some point, they created the types. There are also some people out there that used to study with Ra, and once they got into all the types, they didn't really resonate much with it anymore. So I have also learned, and some of you that have been following me for a while, that we have to be very careful with the types because it's so easy to box us into something or create kind of a competition between us or think we're better or less than others because of a certain type of what we have learned. I have really learned that, yes, the characteristics of the type may really resonate a lot with you, but all the other types also have elements that are also applicable to all of us. It's really describing our multifacetedness as a human, so to say. But again, I want to explain to you now how these types come about, and I hope that helps you a little bit to see this a little bit more flexible, how easy, just because of a slight change in your chart, a type can change, okay? So once a person has the sacral defined, and again, it must be connected through a channel to any of some of the other centers, right? So, but once you see a sacral defined, this center here that's in red, the second from the bottom, that's a sacral center, it's always a generator type. And how do I know if it's a generator or a manifesting generator? The difference is that when you have a manifesting generator, at least one of the motor centers, and what is a motor center? The sacral, the root, the emotional solar plexus, and the will center, we all consider them motor centers. I'm not going to go in the full explanation what that means, but they're energy centers at the end of the day. And if at least one of them is connected to the throat, and it doesn't have to be the sacral, but the sacral also has to be defined, then we have a manifesting generator, right? But again, if just because gate 12 in this example would not be defined, then, whoa, it would right away go back to a generator just because of one gate that changes, right? But again, manigen and generator always has the sacral defined. The manifesting generator on top of it must have at least one motor center connected to the throat. Next, the manifester. The manifest is very similar to the manifesting generator. Also, at least one motor center must be connected to the throat. And by the way, this can be also indirectly. So it could be that the will center is connected to the G center and then to the throat. That would still count. But I'm having here as a simple example, a direct connection. So here the emotional solar plexus is connected to the throat. So I have one motor center connected to the throat. But now here, very important, the sacral is going to be wide and undefined. Because if that would be defined, what would we have? We would have a manifesting generator, okay? Now going on to the projector. The projector also, like the manifestor and the reflector, always has an undefined sacral. This is also why we call these three types the undefined sacral beings. And so this is also for the projector undefined. And here the important distinction is that none of the motor centers, so the other three, the root, the emotional solar plexus, or the will center, is connected to the throat. The projector can have a motor center defined, but it will never be directly or indirectly connected to the throat. But it could have, like in this example, the ajna connected to the throat, totally possible. But it could be that only the root is connected to the spleen and nothing else. And of course, this would be a projector, not a manifestor, because none of the motor centers is connected to the throat. Okay? And I know this may be a little bit complex for some of you, and a human design certification that's probably coming later this year, I'm going to go into much, much more depth with all of that. But for some of you that already have a little bit of an understanding, I think you may, really appreciate it. So next, it says projector, but it's a reflector. So the reflector has all 9 centers undefined. Okay. So you're going to only see these hanging or dormant gates for a reflector. And it still has the same amount of gates defined, like a manifestor, like a manigen, like all the other types, but none of the gates connects to another gate. So there's not one channel defined in a reflector's chart. Okay. And because of that, none of the centers is defined. And this is also why, with a reflector, with a moon cycle, because when the moon activates certain gates, then it may feel as if certain centers are defined. So there's a lot of variability of how a reflector experiences this over the lunar cycle. But again, that could be a whole different video. But so just so you see, right? And this example for, let's say this is a reflector, and if gate 5 now would be defined, just this one gate, all of a sudden the reflector would turn into a generator, just like that. And I have had many, many readings with reflectors actually that have only 2 centers defined. Or for example, just the spleen through gate 50 and 27, that channel connected to the sacral. And they're very undefined, open otherwise in their chart. And they always have told me that they feel so much like the reflector, what they have learned about, right? So I also did a whole masterclass about, how all these different types can come about and why do we feel so much like some of the other types. So I think it was called The Art of Responding, and I'm going to put it in the show notes here if you want to check that out, because I really went more in depth, why you may feel also like another type. I think that's going to give you a lot of understanding and more compassion for yourself. So I think I have a couple more slides that I wanted to show you. So with this whole thing from tropical human design, which again is really the mainstream, any really human design chart you're going to pull on all these websites that are out there, they are most likely all using tropical astrology. And the only website that I know of that is using true sidereal astrology is the Cosmic Human Design astrology.com website. And as you may have noticed, if you have pulled up your chart, often your type can change. It can also stay the same type, but at least some of the gates are going to be different, right? And what really happens, and again, I also, about this whole thing, you may need a more in-depth explanation. I did a masterclass about that called Integrated. I'm going to drop that in the show notes as well, where I really explain how this all came about. And the one key thing is basically that tropical astrology, according to how I really see it, is that it's a little bit further ahead of what it's really in the sky. True sidereal astrology, like when we're talking about, hey, the sun is in Aries. If you look in the sky, and there's so many apps out there today, the sun is actually in Aries. And tropical, what happens when people say that the sun is in Aries, the sun is really in Pisces, the sign before. So also in True Sidereal, we're using the actual constellations of the signs, which to me is more accurate. So True Sidereal or cosmic is much more aligned with what's actually in the sky and more resembling what nature really is. So that's why for me, intuitively, it just feels so much more spot on. So basically, there is about a shift of 32-ish degree from over 2000 years ago to today. And that's why my conscious sun now is no longer in 13. It goes back to this gate 38 here. So everything is just shifted back to where it was actually really in the sky at the time that I was born, right? And because of that, all these gates on the left and the right of the human design chart, they are now going to be slightly different. And as you can see, I actually have another slide now where it looks a little bit simpler. So here, again, this is my tropical HD chart and now my true sidereal. So there's still some similarities, right? It's still a sacral being. So I'm a manifesting generator on the tropical. I'm a generator in the true sidereal. But my chart looks very different, right? Like I have very different centers defined. There are still some similarities, but as you can see, like all these completely different numbers. And again, if you were to take two pens, a black and a red one, and you have a totally white and blank chart, you would come to that yourself. So this is the reason why your chart in cosmic human design, it has to look different. Now, by coincidence, you may still be the same type, but so I've seen some people they stay a projector, for example, but for most people, they are one type and another. And in my case, I'm a generator type in both. And I think it's even more difficult for people when they are non-sacral and sacral being from the shift from tropical to true sidereal. But I also have done several podcast episodes about that I invite you to check out. I'm also going to drop some of them in the show notes here if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're here, just trust that happens for a reason because I think things just evolve and it's our job to look at things critically. And only through following my human design, which in very simple terms means I started to trust myself and really followed my intuitive nudges. True sidereal astrology came into my life. I discovered cosmic human design and I just felt such a strong calling to go there. And I cannot deny that, right? So human design is what has led me to this more expanded version of human design. And also remember that human design is an experiment. So you get to decide which charts you resonate with. This can also change. Like I spent almost just 4 years with my tropical chart, and I had zero interest at all to look at sidereal astrology or versions of that, right? But eventually it came in and I wasn't looking for it. It just came into my life and I responded it. And then it came again. When something wants to get your attention, that's how I was with True Sidereal. And I'm like, okay, I'm listening. And I looked deeper into it. And I was like, okay, and now I cannot go back anymore, and that's my own personal experience. I have to say that more and more of my clients and people that are in my world, they also find great resonance with it. And they finally feel that it truly clicks for them because there were many things in the tropical chart where there was a little bit of a tendency where you were maybe telling yourself a story to fit into that, but deep inside you were like, it doesn't really feel right. Now that could be your experience. But again, whatever your experience is, don't make it wrong. That is your experience and that is totally valid. But I want to make just the point here that there are options. It's and also human design. I mean, this is something, yeah, this is what Ra downloaded. He told us about it, but it's not like we just, okay, this is what it is, and that's it. We're not gonna question it. I think anything in this world, even this video I'm doing right now, you wanna question it. You wanna like, okay, what feels true for myself, you know? So have fun with that. If you feel a deep calling to dive deeper into your truth ideal, cosmic human design, I also offer readings with that. I can also look at both charts, tropical and the cosmic, because I do find there's often like a story, an evolution that both charts, they even talk to each other. It's quite beautiful. So if you're looking for that next level of clarity and alignment for yourself, that is also an option. I'm going to also drop that in the show notes. And that was it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'm excited to be with you next time. Bye, everyone.